Welcome back to the Bounds Boldly podcast for ambitious women in business and a few brave men. I'm your host, Naketa Ren Thigpen, always excited to be in the place with you. Listen, today we have this incredibly potent human that I am excited to be in the space with. Jaime Ellithorpe is the founder of 540 Strategies, a marketing consulting firm that equips entrepreneurs and business professionals with marketing strategies, lead gen, and appointment setting systems. I want to underline that because underlining systems is so key here. I just also like to give a little behind the scenes that I know Jaime is going to talk about in a little bit because we're going to talk about it. The meaning behind 540 Strategies. For all of you who are listening, those ambitious women and few brave men, know that when you have a human in the room where there is a method to the madness, get extra excited because that means she is purposeful, y'all. Purposeful. Jaime, welcome to the BBP. How are you today?
I'm doing so well. Thank you, Naketa, for having me on the show. I'm really excited to be here.
Same. So when I was like doing my due diligence and looking through all of your deets and your assets and your beautiful website, I was thinking to myself, 540 means something. I know it means something. And then I found it, but I won't jump into exactly what it means. I'll let you say it. Why 540? Why 540?
Yeah, so let me start by saying thank you for asking. I thought it would actually add a dash of intrigue to my business. And believe it or not, very few people ask me what the meaning of that is. So it was a little bit shocking to me, but whatever. Being a marketer, sometimes things work, sometimes they don't. But really the backstory about 540 Strategies is I started my company when I was in corporate America. Mm-hmm. And I was going through a time in my career and a lot of things were going on in the company at the time that were making me extremely unhappy. And it really got to be a soul-sucking job. And I got to a place where I was really at a fork in the road. Do I continue down this path or do I start something new? So during that time, I had hired my first life coach. Mm-hmm. And that was a game changer for me. It's what turned everything around. But during that time, my life coach was all about the law of attraction. And I had never been introduced to that concept before. So a lot of what I learned through that time was all about intention and the power of thought and creating your life intentionally. So 540 Strategies is actually the numerical equivalent to the word joy. And when I started this business, I decided that I was going to do something that gave me joy because of what I had gone through in my corporate experience. And I was also determined to bring joy to my clients and the people who come through the front doors of 540 Strategies at any capacity. That's our number one goal, is that we are creating joy through the work that we do.
Oh, I love that. And so it makes sense that we resonated with each other way back in the day. One of our, when taglines were like so, like big, almost as big as your logo, you had to have them. Ours was, first was break barriers. Then it was break the box. Then it was create your balance, create your joy. And I think that was like the last official tagline that we were using, all for the umbrella of we build stronger families, right? Like, all under the umbrella of what we ultimately do. And when you talked about, when I read, first of all, backing up about you creating joy through the work, I was like, oh yeah. It's my people. Yeah, because it's important.
And from like a coaching perspective, whenever I have found that I'm coaching people, whether they're going through something in a relationship or their business or something in their life, when you really drill down to the core of why someone wants a physical result, it's for the purpose of joy. Because at the end of the day, they think having that thing is going to make them happy. So right. We are joyous beings at the core of everything we do and everything that we really, really want in life and in business.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And, when you look at what joy means to you, it's different for everyone. I'm sure when you were in corporate and you were wearing that hat, you were creating your version of joy in as much as you could, given the assets that you had at the time. And then there was something calling you forward a little bit more, pulling you forth to create joy at a different way for this new stage of life that you were in. And maybe you'll be called forth to add a new project or something else that you play with as part of what you're doing for creating joy, which I wish more people would really give themselves permission to do, is, permission to play, permission to see what these passions are trying to say and speak to them. And sometimes I know people jump passions because they don't have a good marketing strategy. They think something's not working because they haven't surrounded it with the right kind of legs on it to get it moving. So they just kind of throw it away and jump into a new passion. When, again, there's nothing wrong with being curious, but sometimes you just need the right team and the right support and the right systems around them, which is why I also was attracted to what you're doing, because I really think systems and thick thighs save lives for real.
Absolutely. But I think the heart of the system is really the heart center, is checking in with yourself and asking, is this bringing me joy? And if it's not, it's making those adjustments so that everything feels authentic and aligned. Because when you're in that state, things just flow, things become easier, things almost create themselves instead of you having to force it or push it. And I think that's what a lot of people try to do, is they're looking from the outside when they should be looking from the inside out.
Totally agree. It's the person inside the professional every single day.
Yes.
Totally agree. You made me think of something when you were talking about the part of systems that can be frustrating for people, right? Like when they're not as aligned, and sometimes it's because of lack of clarity, right? Like, what do I really want this system to do for me? So just backing into a lot of the work with you, what you do with lead gen, and in addition to the marketing systems and the appointment setting, a lot of people will create lead gen strategies because it's a buzzword, right? Like people are using it all over, not always understanding what that means, but they'll create lead gen to no avail because they don't have another system in place for what are you now doing with all of these leads that have opted in to your quiz or your checklist or whatever it is that you created. And now they don't have another way of vetting or filtering out of all those people who signed up, who came into the pipeline, who's actually a good fit, at least at the first level of fit for where I am in business, which makes me think about your appointment setting systems that you have in place, which is a little bit of a filter or a gatekeeper before they get on the call to have a closing conversation, if you will, with that. And a lot of people don't understand the benefit of appointment setting systems and as a part of their lead gen process, to go from beginning, no one knows who you are, no one knows what that is, through now you're able to create the impact or the transformation or whatever it is that you're trying to create. When you were coming out of corporate, was this your first passion project to start to do the lead gen and the marketing and appointment setting systems? Or did you start with one and then you found the flaw and created the others?
Yeah. So, wow, there's so many different directions I could go with that question. It's so beautiful. The one thing I would say is, if I could talk to the old Jaime before leaving corporate, having a lead gen system is imperative to growing a consistently strong business. And I think so many people don't even realize that, or they miss the mark. It was something I did, but the backstory about the agency was it was actually derived out of need. I started out as a business consultant and really a marketing coach, helping small businesses with the whole strategic piece of growing their business. And so that's how I started, as I was doing that on the side with a handful of clients, still working the corporate job and working on building the business and getting some things done. And I quit my job in October of 2019, not knowing what was around the corner for all of us, right, with the pandemic. Right. So at that time, all of the strategies that I had built to grow my business were in person. I was doing a lot of in-person networking. I had a strategy where I was doing public talks where I would invite a bunch of different groups online to my offline talk, and everything died. So when the pandemic hit, I'm sitting here fresh out of my business, not with many clients, going, what am I going to do? And so I knew that I had to go online. And so through a bunch of studies and research of a bunch of different strategies, I came across this really great LinkedIn strategy, started putting it in play in my own business, and thought, oh my gosh, I'm actually getting some results here. This is actually working, right? And so I continued to do that. And somebody approached me and he said, "What are you doing with your business?" He was a sales speaker. And he said, "I'd really like to do that myself." And so he became my first client.
Nice.
And the rest is history. But I think, it was based out of need, with having to make a huge pivot in business when the world was no longer the same place. So I think that's the other piece of advice too, is if you're going to go into business, or if you're in business, make sure that you're nimble, make sure that you're able to pivot and change things up when you need to, and not be afraid to do that, and really listen to your heart. Sometimes our head fools us and tells us the logical things we should do, when your heart's really telling you the truth.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Speaking of need and listening, right? Like the atmosphere, your ecosystem, your current clients and your future clients are often telling you what they want more of. And sometimes we're so resistant because we get rigid because we paid all this money and all this marketing and all these whatever into the way we thought it was going to go, even when our heart is saying, no, I actually that was a helpful move because it got you closer to where you really need to be, but I need you to move a little further. And sometimes we'll be in such resistance to that innate calling to move a little bit further into the next version of ourselves, the next version of our business, the next version of our relationship, that we'll often be really hesitant. And many times it's not just because of how we feel, but because of the expectations of other people around us. Like, oh, Jaime, I thought you said that you were gonna, do in-person conferences and retreats and all the things. What do you mean you're doing it different now? Like, that's not how I see you, because that's not the box that I put you in, right? Which is why we used to say break the box. It was like break your own box, but also stop allowing people to put you in this box, because you're a dynamic. You and I were talking in the green room about being dynamic women. When you're dynamic and you have versatility, you don't have to shy away from that. But you do want to be consistent and clear, which I know you speak to from a marketer hat perspective. It's like, what are you trying to communicate for this to do what? So how you can impact, this world or these people. And sometimes I think because people have so many beautiful, brilliant ideas, they get really tripped up on which is the moneymaker, which is the thing that they should do. So I was really curious, in the work that you do with other people, are a lot of your clients coming in as serial entrepreneurs or multi-passionate, multi-hyphenate folks, or are they more likely saying like, no, this is what I do it really well, I just need help creating the visibility and the kind of the pipeline and the system for it?
Typically, it's the second one, that most people are at a place in their business that they've pretty much figured out who they are and what they do, and they feel confident in that. A lot of people have left corporate America like I have. And I think we're seeing more and more of that, and I anticipate more and more of that.
Yeah.
Over the next few years, I think we're going to have this mass exodus of people leaving jobs and saying, no more. I want to have the say, and I'm really good at this thing, and I'm going to continue to share it, but not under a W-2 format.
That part, which I'm not mad at, because at the end of the day, if you're really good at something, but you're not feeling fulfilled, where you feel like you're in love with it, there is a difference, right? Like many of us as adults have had relationships with good people that we really did like, maybe even loved, but they weren't our person, right? Like they weren't what I would call your forever lover. And even in the forever lover relationship, things elevate and change and hopefully update. But when you're thinking about your skill set, your expertise, your talents, your gifts, you got to give yourself a little grace to say, this is good. I'm good at it. I'm not damaging or self-deprecating that I'm not as good as I thought I was, but am I in love with it? Is this the thing that I really want to wake up and do every single day? Or is this the thing that I feel like I am beholden to and it's become a burden? And that includes your own business, because many of us create businesses that are now a replacement job that doesn't feel good, but we get to lean into our ego of, but I'm my own boss, but you still hate your job. And that's not okay either. You really want to create, pun intended here, on all the ways for what Jaime does for a living. You want to create your joy, and you want to make sure that if you have the the privilege, because it is a privilege to start your own business, if you have the privilege to start even while you're in corporate, even while you work at a nonprofit, even while you have 2 or 3 other jobs, if you're starting your new joy job, your new joy creation 2 hours a week, make sure you're doing it from your heart. So you really are creating the joy, but also have a team of advisors, whoever you can afford at the time, however you can do it, that help you avoid some avoidable mistakes. Because that's the scary
Absolutely.
part.
And I know I didn't coin this term, but I often use the word heart-centered entrepreneur in my
Mm-hmm.
business. And what I mean by that is whatever it is that you're doing is to feel like you're living in your purpose
Yeah.
or your mission. And when you can tie those things to the work that you do, that right there is what will bring joy, but also have the business understanding that you must make money in order to live. So there's that beautiful intersection, as we can't just live, totally in the world of fairies and butterflies on wishes and hopes and dreams. We still have to be profitable, but there's that middle road that you're not just in it for the money, but you also have the mission
Yeah. No, I completely
behind
agree.
you.
I was talking to a colleague in the space, I think it was last week, and we were talking about fiscal responsibility. As a entrepreneur, as a non-entrepreneur, if you are living in this world and you probably have to pay, I don't know, mortgage, rent, subsidy, you have to pay for your food and everything else, you have a fiscal responsibility to make sure that you're not just in survivor mode. Now, that might be the reality of your current valley moment, your current circumstance, but that isn't where you should want to live because you can't thrive there. And knowing you have a fiscal responsibility when you have a business and someone is saying, oh, that's too expensive, that's okay. It's okay that this is not in your price point at this time. If we really want to work together and we truly can't figure out how to make it happen right now, that's okay too. I hope that we both have space for each other in the future. But it doesn't mean you should change your price because you have a fiscal responsibility to your business, especially when you're dealing with the lives of other people. If you have payroll, you have vendors, and you're outsourcing things, you're delegating, those systems require technology that you have to pay for. So you have a fiscal responsibility that you need to be mindful of, even though your emotions, because I'm not going to say your heart because those are not always tied together. Your emotions are saying, oh no, I really want to work with this person, but they can't afford it. So I have to lower my price, because you'll end up resenting, unless you really were led to scholarship a piece of the cost or something like that. But if that wasn't the case and you feel like you need to do it because you're not worthy of the price that you set, which is a whole nother podcast conversation, right? I know that comes up in your business for the people you work with. Like, oh, do I deserve to charge XYZ cent, or do I need to lower it by $500 or whatever it is? And you really have to look at the value that you're creating for people, and not get caught in someone else's subjective experience of your price when they call it expensive, because that's what it is. It's a subjective experience. There are a lot of things that are out of my price point. They're expensive to me because that is my subjective experience, but it doesn't mean that it's not valuable for whatever the price is that those people are selling it for someone else to potentially purchase it. So just make room for that.
Yeah, I had this aha moment just the other day, so maybe this will help anyone in business, is kind of a law of attraction moment that everything is equal energy.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a high ticket offer,
Mm-hmm.
because of that energetic equivalent, whoever is going to come into your world and become a client must meet that energy. And so if you are constantly discounting your services or your offers, the person that's going to come to you and say yes to that offer is going to match that energy. So what energy is that person, right? You're giving them a deal, so they're going to expect a deal from you, and they're going to want you to work harder. They're going to want you to change things in the way you do business, and they're the ones that are going to tear apart your agreement and bring the lawyers in and want to make all the changes. They're the ones that are going to keep you up at night wishing that you never invited them in the door. And so that's what you're going to get when you discount yourself and your services. It's not going to be that beautiful match that you're looking for.
So true. I know that, this at the time of this recording, in a couple of days, we turned 13 years old. And God knows, first partaker of that lesson, because I have been there. I have made those discounts wanting really just to serve and to support. Because one of the scariest things for people to say when you ask them, like, why are they in this business? What do they want to do? And one of the first things they say is because I want to help. I'm like, yes, and like, I hope there's more to that sentence, right? Because the helpers are often the ones that will get rolled over. The helpers are the ones that will get preyed upon, not just from potential clients that are like an example of what you were saying, that will want to manipulate and modify and tell you how to be the expert in your business for them and all of that, but also by colleagues or people you want to be colleagues. When you're networking, they will try to get into your pocket and call it friendship, right? Like, and pocket doesn't always mean you become a client. Sometimes people listening, I want you to understand that your pocket is your network. The people that value your opinion, that hold, when Naketa says, you talk to Jaime, they're like, oh, Naketa sent you to me. Got it. Done. Right. Like, I'm going to work with you. When you hold that kind of credibility with other people in your network, that is like cash in your pocket, if you will. That's a part of your wealth. And some people will see who you're connected to that you just value as friends. You're not thinking anything like, oh my God, that's Jaime Ellithorpe, right? Like, that's my girlfriend, that's my friend. But they're like, oh, because Jaime can do this for me and Jaime can do that, or Jaime could be a client. So they will use the Naketa in that case that just wants to help people to get to Jaime, and will step right over you and throw you away and kick you a couple of times if they have to get to whoever is in your pocket. So just being really careful that you don't misalign your energy, because you don't understand that it really is powerful and you can attract some really special folks. And I don't mean special spice in a good way. I mean special.
So that's the formula for business, is you've got to have the real world tactics and strategies. Mm-hmm. But underneath that, it's the energy that you're bringing.
Yeah.
And it's just like you said, whether it's attracting business partners, clients, JV partners, whatever you're seeing in them is really a reflection of something going on with you.
Yes, hunty.
And so it's really, if you're willing to take that look in the mirror, I have to do it too. I'm definitely not immune. I do as much inner work as I do outer work, but that's the formula, is when I'm seeing things out in the world that I'm not necessarily loving, I stop and go, okay, am I not being intentional? Mm-hmm. Or is it something inside of me that's creating that?
That's right. That's right. Every single time. And I hope that everyone listening to this is separating blame from this, because this comes up in the coaching space specifically a lot. It's Jaime's not saying it's your fault that there's a narcissist sitting on your couch, right? Like, Jaime's not saying that it's your fault that this person stole a bunch of money from you, or stole your project, or tried to steal your IP, or any of those things. What I hear Jaime saying, because I've had this conversation many times, is yes, hold them responsible for what they've done intentionally to harm, to hurt, to do whatever, and hold them accountable to that in whichever way is, appropriate. Please don't go to jail, guys, but like, whatever way is appropriate for you to hold someone else accountable for that. And in parentheses, look at what's going on with you that you attracted their energy in. Like, what was going on for you that you didn't necessarily see that they were being manipulative from the moment you met them, the moment that they walked across the room. It's not a blaming, which I know it can be confusing for people when they're listening. It's like, oh, well, is it my fault or not? It's not about it being your fault. It's just looking at how, like, what kind of way did the dust get in your house, right? It's not your fault that the sun is shining through the window and it's creating dust particles off the floor and the wood beams. Anyone who has wood floors understand that when light hits it, it creates all kinds of stuff. It's not your fault. but you do want to be mindful of whether or not you have a tinted screen on that window. Like, how is the dust getting in, so to speak? That's probably not the best analogy, but roll with it, people. You know my heart. So I just wanted to separate that on purpose, because I can hear the questions like, is it my fault that I dated this person? Is it my fault that they did this to me? Is it my fault because my energy was bad, right? Like, I can hear the questions, and that's not at all what I hear you saying.
No, I love that you explain that, Naketa, and you're on point. If you can take a situation, and even a situation with a person, and kind of separate the person from the energy behind it, if you become kind of an energy detective and just ask yourself, what's the lesson here? Because a lot of situations and people are brought to us to be lessons for us to grow. It's not necessarily a punishment, but it's to shift and guide us back to that path, especially if we have a plan in play. Is that when you get off in the ditch somewhere, sometimes you've got to get back on the road. And so sometimes it's those lessons that are really just brought as signposts to say, okay, what am I doing here? Like, I'll give you a prime example of something I've been working on in my business. Is I've had a couple of less than stellar clients lately. Not to blame them, but I sat back and I said, okay, I'm kind of not liking where this is going. So I went through a great book that I actually got in my coaching program when I was going through my law of attraction coaching certification. And the book is all about creating energetically the perfect client. And to sit down and list all of those qualities of that perfect client, and to get really clear on what you expect from them, what they should expect from you in business, and focus on those things. And in turn, that's shifting my energy. So I've got this piece of paper right here in front of me. I spend about 5 minutes a day going through my perfect client plan. And I know that shifting that energy is going to start making room in the physical for these perfect clients to come in. And it was nothing wrong with the clients that haven't been less than perfect. It's just that, kind of like working out, sometimes we get off course a little bit and the focus isn't on that. And so I decided to refocus myself. I thought, okay, it's time to go back through that exercise that I did 3 or 4 years ago and do it again, because I've grown. My business has grown. I'm to a new level in life and in business. And as we grow, what we want and expect in life changes. So you just have to stay in alignment with that. And the clarity is what will keep you on path.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I love that. So acronyms kind of live in me. And when you said perfect client plan, I thought about, from my clinical days of PCP, which is primary care physician, right? And how important it is for us to check in with our PCP at least once a year, just to make, you don't got to be sick. Just make sure everything is on target. Maybe learn that our hormones are changing as women. Maybe we're in perimenopause, menopause, whatever the case is. So we might need to carry a fan. We might need to just do things a little bit differently than we did last year or a couple years ago. And having, in your acronym terms, a PCP of a perfect client plan, just check in. Is this still a good plan? Which means you have to actually write one, right? Like, exactly. You have to write your perfect client plan. I keep wanting to jumble those words together, but you want to write it and then actually review it. That's your checking in to make sure it's in alignment with what Jaime is saying, with where you are now energetically. Like I tell people all the time, you arrive at a certain place in your life, you evolve, and then you expand, and then you do it all over again. You've now arrived at this new level, and then you evolve and you expand. And it's the cycle that hopefully you're privileged to have over and over and over again for a very long, high quality amount of years. But make sure you're checking in, because again, the business I started in 2011 is not what it is today. It's not how it was today. The mission has always been what pulled me for it. That has never changed. But how we do it is very differently, because I'm a different person. The people that I attract for our team are very different. The people that we have on team this year versus the team we had 5 years ago, very different. Not just because of the services we provide and the tweaks and modifications to that, but because I'm a different type of leader. And you really want to honor that for yourself. But if you're listening to this and you're just starting, you're contemplating if this is even what you want to do. And you're like, I'm transitioning, or I'm not ready to transition because my partner's not ready for me to transition, or I have all these other kind of family responsibilities. I'm in a sandwich generation where I'm also taking care of my elders, my parents. And there's just so many different layers. Jaime and Naketa, I hear you guys talking, but how do I move forward? Jaime, what would you say to those people who are just feeling like stuck in their decision of where to go and how to move forward based on your experience with your own clients and even with yourself?
Yeah, I can speak to this personally. So your indecision is a decision.
Mm-hmm.
And the indecision is what's actually making you more miserable than if you were to just jump. It took me a very, very long time. I was straddling two worlds. I was afraid to give up the corporate paycheck and the stability and come full into my business. So I tried doing both for so long, and it was literally just breaking me in half. And one day, one of my great business friends said, Jaime, I just got this visual in my head. And she started laughing and she said, I see a bird upside down hanging onto a limb. And she said, that is exactly what you're doing, is that the universe is trying to force you out of the nest to fly, but you are so resistant that you are like this bird that is just hanging for dear life upside down because you're so unwilling to just take this step. And what I've learned is that that is the first step to being an entrepreneur or being in business for yourself, is there is no path. You have to put a foot forward and just have that knowing that the path is going to appear as you're putting your foot down, getting ready to step on it. It's just
powerful.
that is the entrepreneurial journey. And I don't know if it ever ends because it feels the same at every level. Is that you have to just have that. I don't even know if I want to say the word faith. I think a lot of people would understand that, just like you have a faith in something maybe higher, like a higher power. It's that same feeling that you must have in your business, is that the answers aren't going to be in front of you. And you're going to wake up some days going, I don't know what to do. But just moving forward, the path will start to show itself.
Yes. Oh, snap, 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 snap. All the snaps of fingers for this, because that is, woo, there's so much power and there's so much truth in it. I love the visual of the upside down bird hanging on to a limb or a line, instead of flying and being upright and being able to eventually soar, even if it just lets go, to fly a little bit. It can be really scary. And I recognize that. I appreciate that. I started as an entrepreneur that just jumped, right? Like just jumped in and was like, I'm going for it. And it really is scary. It's also a decision I don't regret. 13 years later, I'm like, we have had some huge failure moments, some crack open the floor, I am crying, I just want to melt into it and disappear moments. And I've also had some beautiful, why didn't I do this 10 years earlier moments, right? Like, and so many more of those than the other, but just giving yourself that opportunity to stretch is really important. So I appreciate that.
And in looking back, I guess this is something else I would tell someone, is if you're in a very unhappy job, would you rather be having that ice cream on the moment, crying on the floor, being miserable in your job? Or would you rather be having that ice cream on the floor, crying moment with your business, knowing that you have the power to change? Yes. When you're in a job, you don't have that power. All you have is the next paycheck. And unfortunately, we live in a world today where that paycheck can get yanked. You can go into your office on Friday and think everything's fine, and your whole world comes crashing down on Monday because you've had to give your entire life and all of your efforts to that job, and you don't have a backup plan. Where in business, if you lose a client, yeah, that's devastating, but that's not your entire money mix. It's one client. Where if you're putting all your eggs in that job basket, I tried it. I've tried it. I will be completely honest to your audience. I've tried both.
Yeah.
And when you have a job, they expect 110% out of you. They don't want you to have that business. So it's very hard to straddle, but you just have to make that decision. You know, I had another guru that would talk about burning the boats. And I always thought that
Mm,
that was such a funny statement. But looking back, I understand what he meant, is that you've got to just look forward and you can never look back.
yeah.
You
It
have
is.
to just, failure's not an option. You know, it's just continuing to move forward.
Yeah, it is definitely a challenge when we have the because I know that analogy of the boats, like when you know that the boat is there, you'll always constantly be, paddling a little bit differently because at any moment you're giving yourself permission to jump back. It's sticky tricky, right? Because to jump into entrepreneurship, if you're doing it thoughtfully, you should still be on the boat while you're making your plan for your exit if you can. That's not always an option. Some people are walking in, like you said, on a Friday and their swipe card doesn't work to even open the door and they're finding out that they don't have a job for Monday, right? Like that's real talk that was happening across industries for the last 4 or 5 years where people didn't even get notice. It was just where hundreds of us are locked out, or they got notice for a couple of weeks or a couple of months without severance, without, any kind of support. And we're really, I hate to use the term, up a creek, but a lot of those things were happening. So if you can, it is helpful for you to start putting your ducks in a row, if you will, while you have some form of support across the water. So maybe you're able to just put $50 a week or $500 a pay, whatever it is based on your kind of bracket that you're in, because you are going to need some capital for your business. Like that is the reality. You need something, even if it's just to buy new pens and a notebook. You need something. There's software for systems and things. So just trying to be as smart and strategic about it as possible. But if you find that you're using that as a crutch and you're handicapping yourself by saying like, oh, I'm building capital, I'm building capital, I'm building capital, you have to make a decision, like Jaime is saying, when is enough enough? When is enough crying on the floor for this company enough when I really am craving to create my own? At some point, you have to stop using that as a crutch. And if you find that you get into entrepreneurship and it is not your game, because Jaime, you and I both know that there are some people who should not be doing this. They should not be doing this for whatever reason. They weren't ready. They jumped too soon. They jumped pure ego. They are not here to help people. They're only here for revenue streams. The customer service is horrible. The delivery isn't ethical. Like there's so many people who really, especially in the professional development training coaching space, there's a lot of people who should not be doing that version of entrepreneurship. And if you find that you've jumped in and this isn't your thing, it's okay to go back. If you find that you're a better worker than you are an entrepreneur, that there should be no judgment of yourself for that. If that's where you show up strong to pour in to the lives of other people. But just be really mindful about your intentions, right? Because like you were saying earlier, intentions matter. Who is your perfect client and having a plan for that? But also, who are you as a leader? Have you considered that starting your own business means that you're going to be leading you and potentially other people in addition to your clients? And if you are toxic and vomiting and angry and a bully, you should not be an entrepreneur. You probably shouldn't be working in an organization with other humans either, but that's a whole different podcast. But just like, because I'm hearing you, and I'm also, because I'm thinking about the emails and things that we're going to get from people like, oh, well, no, entrepreneurship just wasn't for me. Is Jaime saying that I should, I should have never gone back? No, if it's not for you, that's okay. Like she's saying, it's okay if it's not for you, but if it's for you, stop giving yourself an out if you really want it.
I'll tell you how you know it's for you. So I did go back to a job for a while. That things during the pandemic really did get slightly scary. And I did go back to a job, but I could hardly stand it. I sat in meetings all day long that were in my mind pointless, thinking about all the things that I could be doing with my time to build my business.
Yeah.
And I knew at that point that there was no point of return. Like I had gone across the aisle fully into entrepreneurship. So I think if you go back to a job, there is absolutely, like Naketa said, there's no shame. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But I will tell you that you'll find out very quickly who you are when you go back.
Yeah. That's so I have a good question for you before I
Mhm.
ask you my famous question.
Yeah.
What do you feel like that was almost like breaking up in a relationship and then deciding if this is really what I want and coming back together? Like some people they recommend it. Like if you're really having a hard time in this relationship, separate for a little bit and then see how you are separate before you decide to come back together. Would you say that for anyone who's listening to this that has a business and they're really struggling, they think they've done all the things, they've bought all the courses to do a course in a weekend, right? Like they've done all the things we were talking in the green room. They've tried, they've hired marketers, they've hired strategists, they've hired coaches. They're just like, I don't know what to do. Would you suggest, based on your personal experience, of maybe giving themselves permission to see what going back to quote unquote traditional work is like, to see if they really are in the right place? Or do you think it's just a personal choice? It just depends.
The other half of my business that we really haven't talked about today is the manifesting and mindset pieces.
Mm-hmm.
So, there again, I think you've got to assess the inner and the outer. So, you've got to take a look at your mindset and where have you been? Because if you've been worried and desperate and fearful, then you're actually repelling business and not growing your business. So,
Mm-hmm.
taking that long, honest look in the mirror, again, it's not to berate yourself or judge yourself, but it's just to be honest and just say, have I gone about this the right way? Or do I need to change my attitude and some of the things that I've been thinking about? So, I think that's one piece.
Yeah.
Because I will tell clients that too, is you can have the most beautiful marketing strategy and you and I can build this fantastic system. But if you're bringing the desperation or the fear of not getting clients to every single prospecting call you're on, you're going to sabotage every single one of them, even if you're saying the right things.
Yeah.
So that's one piece is, I mean, you can hire brilliant people to help you grow your business, but few talk to you about the inner game that's going on under your own hood. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the first thing. And then I think the second thing is you just have to kind of figure out what you love about how life works. If you're one of those people that you want an X number of dollar paycheck going into your bank account twice a month or once a month or whatever it is, with the work that you were doing in a job, then maybe that is for you. Because as an entrepreneur, that's a huge mindset shift. You've got to think about money completely different.
No word
So
has been ever truer.
there's some
Mm-hmm.
people that is just too much of a risk
Yeah. No,
for them.
that's a really good what I would call like a call to action for yourself, is to ask yourself the question of how do you think about money, the way that it flows in, how it's going to flow out, because the way that you create those delegation methods and where, the critical hat, urgent hat, important hat, all of that is very different when you have a business. And that's a really, really powerful point. In addition to everything is in inner game. I don't care what people say. It's all inner, and then the outside is the overflow. But I know a lot of people are not willing to kind of stand in the soft skills, right? Like the softness of what that looks like. Even leadership is technically a soft skill. But you're looking at the edges of it because you're thinking of everything as a ROI. But there's going to be a lot of stuff that comes up as an entrepreneur. I tell people all the time, I didn't even know I had confidence issues until I became an entrepreneur. I had no idea. Like you couldn't, I don't think anyone would have considered me arrogant or anything, but they were like, oh no, Naketa knows what she's talking about. Like she's good. She's straight. Cause I'm a forever learner and all those things. And I'm always welcoming new information in new ways, just as much as I'm giving. Became an entrepreneur, and someone wants to call my baby ugly, as in the business, right? You take it very personal. It's very different than when you work at X organization and someone says, oh, this X organization has an ugly process, or I don't like this, or I disagree with that. You're like, okay, I understand, let me support you through it. They say that about your baby. It's a very different thing. And you really can internalize all of those things. So yeah.
If you want to know what you're made of, start a business.
Girl.
Because all of your inner stuff is going to come up. Oh my gosh. Because here's the thing, you're always having to do things out of your comfort zone because you've never done them before, or they need to be done to get your business to the next level. And that's when what you're made of is really going to show.
Whew, honey. That's a whole Jaime.
We could
That
have
is
a
a
series
whole,
on that, right?
yeah, like seriously. That is a whole other. Oh my God. You're so on point with that. So I want to ask you my favorite question, my famous question for this podcast. When you are not helping people, manifest and get their mindset right and prepare their systems, their strategy, get intentional about what they're doing, how they're doing it with their perfect client plan and all the layers that you're kind of pulling together in support of this next great business that they're doing across your many clients, how are you giving yourself permission to pause?
Yeah, so I'll be really authentic. I've been really guilty about that up until late. But what I've actually been doing recently is scheduling in the time.
Yeah.
One of the things that I really have let go since the pandemic was working out. I was working a little bit too much and not working out. So I've just made time in the mornings that I've put back some time on my schedule. I'm not taking calls quite as early as I was to make sure that I have time to do that. So that's one of the many things. I've also become more intentional with what I'm eating. I have a husband and a small stepson who loves junk food. So it's very easy to eat the French fries and not the broccoli. But I've been trying to do more conscious cooking.
Yeah.
So it's just those little things. Again, it's about being intentional. Is you've got to really just decide what you want. And sometimes it boils down to when's enough. Like you mentioned earlier. Are you fed up in your career? How much more are you willing to take? Are you a little bit overweight? Are your pants getting too tight? How much farther do you want it to go? Do you want it to stop now, or do you want to have to buy a new wardrobe? It's like, where is your stopping point? And then figuring out a plan to get back on track. We're dynamic beings. None of us are perfect, but it's being able to recognize when you're off path, give yourself permission to have been off path, but give yourself empowerment to get back on.
Perfect. Perfectly said. Oh, that was fantastic. I don't even want to add anything to that. How can people connect with you to learn more about 540 strategies?
Absolutely. Well, my website's the first place. If you can spell my long name, it's JaimeEllithorpe.com. That's JaimeEllithorpe.com. And I hang out quite a bit over on LinkedIn. So I would love to have you join me over there, because that's what we're helping people do from the lead gen perspective, is be seen and heard on that platform. So those are the two places where you can find me the most.
Oh, that's perfect. Jaime, thank you so much for carving out time today, away from your husband, away from your son, like all the things that are going on in your business, all the greatness that's happening as you're manifesting your own PCPs, your perfect client within the plan that you've created. We really appreciate the time that you've carved out. And I know that we went into some overflow time, which was fantastic. And I just wanted to say we honor you for showing up and showing up fully.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Balance Boldly listeners, as always, I told you the most potent of the potent humans are here to play on the BBP. I hope that you really were inspired, you felt acknowledged, you felt seen, and you felt heard as we were engaging in this beautiful conversation today. So I have two favors to ask. If you are new to the BBP, then get used to me asking. If you are a returning listener, then you already know what's coming up. The first favor is for you to think about at least one person in your ecosystem. One person in your ecosystem that can benefit from hearing Jaime's story, the go through that she went through to get to the other side of where she is and how she's helping and supporting businesses. Because there's a lot of people that are also navigating that kind of stuck place of whether to go, whether to stay, and how to get through that indecision space. Please do share with at least one other person. And the second thing is I want you to go enjoy the balance of your day, but remember, do it boldly.